all the different prisons showing the same picture, you begin to get the impression that there was a chain of command aspect, but how high does it go? It doesn't answer that. These tapes were in the Oval Office, and they were kept secret for 30 years, just came out a year or two ago. And I want to reveal here the sound of compassionate conservatism. And remember that Nixon was, in many matters, domestically, environment and some others that don't come to my mind. Help me here. To the left of Clinton is what I was about to say. That was a welfare policy, all right? That was a different political environment, and he would have fit right into this political environment very happily. But at that time, his policies were reasonably compassionate on the domestic front. To think that they were very different on the foreign policy front would, I believe, be a mistake. So the chance of hearing, then, what has been happening in the Oval Office lately, I think, is pretty well demonstrated by what was happening in 1972 with respect to Vietnam. And I'll just give you a little of that from my book here. I did some tapes. I copied these tapes myself with my wife. We went over and over them. The tapes are available now from the National Archives. You can actually get copies of the tapes, which wasn't true when I made these transcriptions. I had put out the Pentagon Papers in 1971. This was a year later. The most heavy bombing in history was about to begin, a year after the Pentagon Papers. So anyone who thinks that any one act ended that war, or that the Pentagon Papers did, is very mistaken. War went on for years after. But in 1972, he was on the verge of launching the heaviest bombing ever in North Vietnam, and or in the world, actually. So Nixon is talking to, on April 25th, 1972, Nixon is talking to Henry Kissinger on this tapes. We've got to stop thinking in terms, I've heard these tapes a lot, so I can, I do Kissinger better when I have a cold, but we've got to stop thinking in terms of a 3-day strike. We've got to be thinking in terms of an all-out bombing attack, which will continue until now by all-out bombing attack, I am thinking about things that go far beyond. I'm thinking of the dikes, I'm thinking of the railroad, I'm thinking, of course, of the docks. I agree with you. We've got, no, not Vive, no, that's wrong guy there. We've got to use massive force. 2 hours later, he's talking to Ziegler, his press agent, public affairs officer, and H.R. Haldeman with Kissinger and Nixon, president. How many did we kill in Laos? Ziegler. Maybe 10,000, 15? In the Laotian thing, we killed about 10, 15. See, the attack in the north that we have in mind, power plants, whatever's left, POL, petroleum, the docks. And I still think we ought to take the dikes out now. Will that drown people? About 200,000 people. No. I'd rather use the nuclear bomb. Have you got that, Henry? That, I think, would be just too much. The nuclear bomb, does that bother you? I just want you to think big, Henry, for Christ's sakes. So a week later, on May 2nd, now I'm getting there, he's saying, we had to give us back our prisoners. America will not be defeated. We must not lose in Vietnam. So we must draw the sword. So the blockade is on. And I must say that I like it. And the blockade was to be accompanied by B-52 bombing for the first time in all of North Vietnam. And I want this clearly understood. The surgical operation theory is all right, but I want that place bombed to smithereens. If we draw the sword, we're going to bomb those bastards all over the place. Let it fly, let it fly. May 4th, that was May 2nd. He's in the office with Kissinger, Al Haig, and John Connally. They're about to do the bombing. The heavy starts a day or two later. And he's thumping his desk as he points to an imaginary or maybe a real map on it. And I went over this over and over with my wife to get the thumps in the right place here in the book, so nobody would accuse me, if they listen to the tape, which you can do, of, that's wrong, the thump wasn't there, and so forth. Vietnam, here's those little right in there, here they are. Here's the United States. Here's Western Europe, that cocky little place that's caused so much devastation. Here's the Soviet Union. Here's the Mideast. Here's the silly Africans and the not quite so silly Latin Americans. Here we are. They're taking on the United States. Now, damn it, we're going to do it. We're going to cream them. This is not in anger or anything. This old business that I'm petulant, that's all bullshit. I should have done it long ago. I just didn't follow my instincts. I'll see that the United States does not lose. I'm putting it quite bluntly. I'll be quite precise. South Vietnam may lose, but the United States cannot lose, which means basically I have made the decision. Whatever happens to South Vietnam, we are going to cream North Vietnam. For once, we've got to use the maximum power of this country against this little country to win the war. We can't use the word win, but others can. And finally, that afternoon, he says to Kissinger, the only place where you and I disagree, Henry, is with regard to the bombing. You're so goddamn concerned about the civilians, and I don't give a damn. I don't care. I'm concerned about the civilians because I don't want the world to be mobilized against you as a butcher. If you think that the conversation in the latest White House, the current White House, sounded different from that on the tapes we may hear 30 years from now, if ever, I think you'd be mistaken. That is the sound of empire. That is the sound of an American president with his finger on the button and confronted with a defiant, non-deferential little country. We tortured a country of Vietnam, but it did not win the war for us. And it will not win the war here. I say that not in praise of any adversaries there, but simply in recognition that people fighting against foreign invaders and having shown an ability and a willingness to give their lives to kill foreigners in their country are not going to give up. That's my guess. So that's the connection between Iraq and Vietnam. Thank you.